Hey, it's me, Saul, and today I would like to talk to you about a few cards that I think are absolutely necessary now that Arc 5 World has been confirmed to be coming to Duel Links in 2021. Now, with the arrival of Arc 5 World comes the arrival of Pendulum Summoning, and while there will probably be some changes as to how pendulums are implemented into Duel Links, there are some core features of that mechanic that, if brought over into Duel Links, have massive potential to shift the meta in terms of the spells and traps that we use for removal. Now, before we get started, I just want to say a quick thank you to you guys because yesterday we hit 1,000 subs on the channel. It was a massive achievement for me. I'm extremely grateful, and I thought to myself, well, Arc 5 got announced on the exact same day that I reached 1,000 subs. It has to be a sign. It has to be divine, and I've been talking about Pendulum support for ages. I've been speculating about Pendulum cards that we could get, support that I want to be brought over into the game, and so it just seems really fitting that the video that I used to celebrate this achievement is no longer speculative. I'm telling you that I think you need these cards to prepare for Arc 5 World. So thank you guys so much for joining the fam. Thank you so much for coming along on the journey. Let's get started. So for those of you who do not know, in Arc 5, a new summoning mechanic called Pendulum Summoning was introduced into the game. With Pendulum Summoning comes obviously Pendulum monsters. They're monsters that go into your main deck and can operate as either monsters on the field with monster effects, or you can put them in what is called the face-up pendulum zone. Think of it like a continuous spell zone specifically for these kinds of cards, and you can use them as continuous spells. This means that most of these monsters have two sets of effects. That's one important factor, and the second important factor is they can be treated as spell cards. That's very, very important, and you get two of these pendulum zones. You have to have a pendulum monster in each zone acting as a continuous spell effectively. This is just me giving you the shorthand explanation of it in order to pendulum summon. Now, why is this important? Well, to be honest with you, it's not. The reason is we don't really know how they're going to implement pendulum summoning. We don't know if they're going to give us new zones to summon with, if they're going to convert our existing zones. So there's only so much speculation you can do in that area. However, Pendulum monsters have a different mechanic to any other card in the game, and that is the face-up extra deck. If an ordinary monster is destroyed in Yu-Gi-Oh!, where does it go? The graveyard. If you tribute a monster, it goes to the graveyard. More often than not anyway. There are obviously exceptions, but for the most part, you XYZ summon, synchro summon, destroy a monster, all those kinds of things, and it goes to the graveyard. However, if a pendulum monster is destroyed, it does not go to the graveyard. It goes into a new zone called the face-up extra deck, right? So stay with me because this is where it gets a little bit, well, not confusing per se, but if you've never experienced pendulum summoning, it's a lot to take in all at once. So if you destroy your opponent's monster that is a pendulum monster, rather than going to the graveyard, it goes into their face-up extra deck. Well, you may think to yourself, why does it matter that this card is in the face-up extra deck? I don't understand. Well, now we bring the mechanic full circle. When you pendulum summon using the pendulum monsters you have in the zones on the field, you can summon all of the monsters in your hand that are between a certain level, right? But you may think, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, our starting hand size is 4. You might not have that many cards in your hand. Cool, fine, that's all good and fun. Here's where it gets interesting. When you pendulum summon, you can also bring out monsters that are in the face-up extra deck, right? So any pendulum monster that has been destroyed over the course of the duel can be brought out via pendulum summon on, well, your opponent's turn. And you can pendulum summon every turn so long as you have pendulum monsters in your face-up pendulum zones that have the right levels to balance the scales. The closer we get to the release of pendulum summoning and the more information we have, I'll do a full guide explaining how it works. I'm just giving you the bare minimum to understand the point that I'm about to make. This means that the longer a duel goes on and the more of these monsters that you destroy, the more ammunition that you give to your opponent, because if these cards are going to the face-up extra deck, then they can just be recycled out every single turn. So let's say there's a monster you had to use all of your resources to get rid of and destroy. Well, sorry, it's coming right back next turn if your opponent has a potential to pendulum summon. You may think to yourself, well, that's not fair. These monsters just float infinitely. They're just going to keep on coming back. That's broken. That's disgusting. What am I supposed to do? Here's my piece of advice, and here are the cards that I think that you need in order to get ready for Arc 5. Pendulum monsters will always return to the face-up extra deck and be summonable if they get destroyed. However, However, if you banish a Pendulum monster, barring an effect that your opponent has to bring it back from the banish zone, well, it's gone. It doesn't float, it's not going to the face-up extra deck, it is gone, removed from the game. Which means that the best way in which to deal with Pendulum monsters is to use cards that banish. So banishing cards, banishing spells, banishing everything, anything at your disposal that you can use to banish your opponent's Pendulum monsters, that's what you should use your banishing effects on, right? That just gets them out of the equation, makes it so that your opponent can't reuse that resource. For that reason, I personally believe that cards that have banishing effects will rise in value as we get into the course of Arc 5 and good Pendulum monsters come out. So, the first card I'm going to recommend to you is Karma Cut. Obviously, if you don't have Karma Cut already, it's an SR card in a mini box. I personally believe that this card is going to become very, very valuable when Arc 5 is released, because if your opponent normal summons one of their Pendulum monsters, because they can be normal summoned, remember they are both monsters and spells at the same time, they can come out normally. If you Karma Cut that monster, it's removed from the game, whereas if you destroy it, or if you let your opponent Synchro Summon using it, or Fusion Summon using it, it'll go to the face-up extra deck, which means it's just going to come right back out later on. Stick with me. So with it being banished, you no longer have to worry about it. It's no longer a resource that your opponent can use on end. Now, if pendulums don't end up being super dangerous or difficult to deal with when they come out, this might not be a necessity. But assuming that we have good pendulums and we need ways to get rid of them, banishing is the best way to do it. Now, the next card to keep in mind is Cosmic Cyclone. What have I been saying to you? Pendulum monsters can be used both as monsters or as effectively continuous spells. They can be put in the face-up Pendulum zone and they are acting as a spell card. While there, you can activate Cosmic Cyclone, pay 1,000 life points, and banish those cards from the game. Now, Cosmic Cyclone is a very old card and it's in a main box. I personally believe that the next time a 50% gem sale comes around, you should try investing in Cosmic Cyclone, because the thing about pendulum monsters in pendulum zones is they're not just there to be there, they're also giving your opponent effects that they can use to their advantage. You're not just getting rid of it so that your opponent can't pendulum summon, you're also preventing them from using the effect of the pendulum monster in the pendulum zone, right? So you can use Cosmic Cyclone to banish it just like you would an equip spell or a continuous spell or anything else that was in their back row. If you use a card like MST on a pendulum monster that's in the pendulum zone, then that counts as destroying it and it goes to the face-up extra deck. Now, another card I want you to consider is Dark Core. It's another SR card. Not many people use it, not many people rate it because we have, Karma Cut. But you discard one card and target one face-up monster on the field and you banish that target. So on your turn, let's say your opponent has a pendulum monster on the field, you can just get rid of it rather than waiting till their turn again using a Karma Cut. Now, I personally believe that Karma Cut is superior, and I'm not telling you, make sure you take this away from this video, I'm not telling you to go and spend all your money or all your gems on these cards, but if you have them, prepare to use them. And if you don't have them and they're on a list of things that you're considering getting, I would move them up in priority. Now, we do need to wait, right? We do need to wait to see what pendulums are actually like, how difficult it is to deal with them, and the exact ways in which Konami decides to implement pendulum summoning. But banishing cards is the best way to deal with a pendulum monster based on their mechanic. Now, Konami might decide to completely change that face-up extra deck mechanic when bringing them into dueling, so that's very unlikely, but this is why I say you should wait and just prepare your mind that you will most likely need to get these cards, and if you have the opportunity to get them before Arc 5 comes around, I would do it. I personally would get them. So that's everything. I hope you learned something new. I hope you were informed a little bit about how pendulums work, and now that we know that they're coming, just getting into the mindset of, okay, how am I going to deal with these cards? How do I deal with this new mechanic? How do I counter it preemptively? So these are just some tips that can help you in that regard, and we'll see how everything looks by the time, Arc 5 finally rolls around. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you guys again for all of your support. I've loved making videos and content to entertain you guys and interacting with you guys. So thanks. I love you guys, and have a great day. Bye.